The Australian outback is daunting in its size and steeped in a reputation for murder and mystery. In 1889, about the 14th of June, a party led by a man named Blaine left Cadelga station in the extreme far north of South Australia, droving a herd of 500 fat cattle to Adelaide to sell at the market. It was a long, slow process. One of the men on the drive was Richard Hocken Marrick. Another was an Aboriginal man named Jackie, who was 27 years of age. Jackie's main duty was to round up the horses at the start of the day, while Marrick looked after the cattle. Marrick was a Cornishman with a dark complexion, aged 29. Marrick had worked at the station almost the entire year, and was a quiet and well-behaved man. Jackie, on the other hand, had a reputation for possessing a violent temper. On the cattle drive he attempted to strike the cook with a waddy, an Aboriginal wooden club, and told the trail boss Blaine that he would kill him when they got back to the country. Despite his prickly nature, it was agreed by everyone that Jackie was treated well by his workmates. The party reached Adelaide on the 9th of September, leaving the cattle at Kilkenny, the drovers staying at the John Bull Hotel in Curry Street while in the city. When it was time to leave, Blaine and Jackie left before Marrick. It was another 3 days before Marrick and a man named George Ledger left the hotel to follow, after spending most of their money on a good time. They caught up to the others at a place called Manoora. George Ledger later gave evidence that from what he observed, Marrick treated Jackie well. Marrick and Jackie continued their trip back to Cadelga, while the others headed towards Inaminka. Jackie seemed in a good mood, even saying he liked the cook and that he liked Dick before they parted. The pair were camped near Farina on the 1st of October. A man named Alexander Mackay saw them there and noted that Marrick was perfectly sober. At Waikalkura on October the 3rd, a woodcutter named John Heel asked if Marrick would take a parcel to give to someone who lived along the way. Marrick agreed to do so. Marrick and Jackie were camped at Dalcomina on the 3rd of October when they were seen by a teamster from Kilalpanina Mission Station named Charles Rodiger. It was raining and Jackie was sheltering under the buggy. Rodiger asked why Marrick didn't come and join him to get out of the rain. Jackie replied, "Him mad bugger." The following day Rodiger met the pair again, riding along the road out of Waikalula, 5 miles from their previous campsite. Rodiger gave them a drink of water. The pair seemed to be on good terms with each other then. That night the two men camped at Pilkina. The next day Marrick delivered the parcel entrusted to him by the woodcutter to Emma Gates at Blaze Well, 70 miles from Hergot. She could see he had an Aboriginal companion, but he remained in the distance, so she could not identify him later. On October the 5th, 1889, the two men arrived at a waterhole 25 miles from Pilkina and made camp. It was the last time Marrick was seen alive. A few days later Jackie arrived at New Well. He spoke to another Indigenous man named Bobby, who asked where the horses were. Jackie said they were all right. Bobby then asked where the white man was, and Jackie said he travelled by himself. Bobby noticed that Jackie was wearing good clothes when they met. When Jackie departed, he went off in the direction of Mulka, a deserted station, going through the bush rather than by the road. Around the same time, Jackie was encountered at Mungaroni by a man named Jackie Spanker and his companions. Jackie had horses with him this time. He also gave a handkerchief to one man, several articles to a woman named Judy, including a rug with Marrick's name on it, and threw away several things, including the head of a tomahawk. Spanker also inquired why Jackie was alone. He replied that his boss had gone up by Inaminka. "What about your other boss?" he then asked. Jackie said he had left him, meaning Marrick, at Hergot. At Goyder's Lagoon he gave some more articles away to another Indigenous woman named Jenny. Again he said one white fellow took another out, but this time he said he left Marrick drunk in a pub. Also here he was seen by a man named Charlie, a black tracker from Diamantina, who noticed the fine clothes that Jackie wore. About the 20th of October, Jackie arrived at the station, along with 9 horses, but without Marrick. When asked about the other man, Jackie answered, "I left him drunk at Hergot." The drover had then gone on and waited 35 miles away at Clayton for Marrick to catch up. After waiting 3 days, Jackie had continued alone. In mid-October, the mystery of Richard Marrick's disappearance was solved, when Jack Moakley discovered the body in the waterhole. He went and announced his find at the station, and police were alerted. Mounted Constable Dittmer from Hergot learned of the discovery on the 17th of October, and arrived with Moakley, the station manager, and others at Killalpernina on the 21st of October, when they pulled the body from the water. The waterhole was 275 yards long and 15 yards wide, and the body was about 9 or 10 yards from the bank, in 14.5 inches of water. The body was clad in a cotton shirt, flannel, strapped trousers and socks. An overcoat, a billy can, and a patch of congealed blood was located on the bank. 3 tomahawk blows, 3 inches in length in the skull, revealed how Marrick had died. The body had decomposed, with the scalp being missing. The wounds were inflicted when Marrick was laying down on his left side, in the opinion of Dr. Bennett, who examined the remains on the 6th of November. Marrick had attempted to defend himself, as evidenced by the 4th finger on the right hand being almost severed. The 3 blows had been made with powerful force, one on the top of the head, one behind the right ear, and the 3rd had landed between the other 2, fracturing the bone. Constable Dittmer then had the unpleasant task of ferrying the decomposing body on a buggy 100 miles to Hergot. Meanwhile, on the 5th of November, Mounted Constable John Bannigan arrested Jackie 5 miles from Cadelga station. Both Jackie and his wife were wearing items of clothing which belonged to Marrick. Although he resisted, Bannigan got him under control and handcuffed. Bannigan thought to check with Jackie's wife, asking her if Marrick had molested her, and that Jackie had killed out of revenge. He had not. The policeman and his prisoner then started out to the waterhole. Jackie remarked while in custody, "What for did I want to kill my mate? I left along Hergot him drunk. Who been telling you? That one blackfellow? Bloody liar." Jackie repeated the last phrase several times. Then he said, "I left my horses along Clayton. Dick stay at Hergot all day drunk." Jackie told 2 different versions of what had happened at the waterhole. The first story he gave was that 3 Aboriginal people had entered their campsite. A woman, who slept with Marrick all night, and 2 men named Jimmy and Bobby. When Jackie was out rounding up the horses, Jimmy and Bobby had killed Marrick with boomerangs and the tomahawk. Jackie said he hid in the bush, frightened of the others. He would point these 3 out at Goyder's Lagoon, he promised. He then changed the story to say that he and Marrick had arrived at the waterhole at sundown and set up camp. He claimed Marrick had been growling at him all day during their journey. The 2 argued about who should light the campfire. Jackie made a fire and began to boil some meat while talking with Marrick. Suddenly Marrick said, "You lazy bugger." Jackie retorted, "You lazy bugger." Marrick grabbed a big stick and hit Jackie over the head, breaking the wood. The 2 men then pummeled each other with their fists before Marrick shot Jackie in the leg, so Jackie hit Marrick with the tomahawk. Bannigan examined Jackie's leg, where he said he was shot. There was a wound there, but it was old. Jackie admitted later it was done by a white man named Billy in Queensland, years before. While at the waterhole, Jackie was tied to a tree, and the policeman and some native people dug up the ground near the bloodstain. Jackie indicated where they should dig. One of the diggers unearthed a small tin, a hat, and a leather pocketbook containing some money. Under these were some receipts and other papers. The waterhole was searched as well, and from the water was recovered a razor strop, a billy can, a quart pot, a martingale, a bag of cartridges, and a revolver in a pouch. When Jackie was released from the shackles binding him to the tree, he made a bid for freedom, and swung the chain at Bannigan from behind in an attempt to knock him out, striking him on the head. Although he fought furiously, he was restrained and kept pinioned the remainder of the time. He was then taken to Adelaide, and on the 30th of November 1889 committed to stand trial. Wasting no time, the trial began on the 5th of December. Jackie claimed that others had killed Marrick, but his contradictory statements went against him. Other than that, he took little interest in the proceedings. Indigenous witnesses had some difficulty in understanding and communicating in English, but slowly their stories were related and corroborated each other. One of the witnesses in court was Charlie, the tracker who had assisted Bannigan in arresting Jackie. While in custody, he had conversed with Jackie, who said that Marek had argued with him the whole journey and hammered him, so one night he killed him while he was asleep. Then he dragged the body into the water and threw a tree branch over it, and then buried some of Marek's possessions. He kept 5 shillings to buy some rations with. Reverend Fleal from the mission was called by the defence to give his opinion of the Aboriginals giving evidence against Jackie. He said that he would not trust the word of Jackie Spanker, whom he had known for 6 years. He also said Bobby had lied to him in the past, but added he did not think they would lie during something as important as the trial. The jury found Jackie guilty, but added a recommendation for mercy. On the 16th of December, an anonymous letter was published in the Register newspaper, which alleged gross cruelty had been inflicted upon Jackie. It made several statements and accusations, which quickly inflamed public outrage. It stated that Jackie was undefended in court because he could not communicate with the solicitor provided to him. It went on to say that Jackie had a good reputation and had not resisted arrest or tried to flee prior to his arrest. The writer, calling himself Veritas, then went on to say that a heavy iron ring had been placed around Jackie's neck, which grew too hot to touch in the glaring sun, and that Jackie was left out in the hot sun all day, while the escort relaxed in the shade. Jackie had to traverse 300 miles on the back of a camel, with no padding and no respite. He could not even raise his hands to swat away flies. Jackie was thrown down to the ground at night, half dead from thirst and the prolonged torture of the uncomfortable ride, by Bannigan, who sneered like a music hall villain that as long as his prisoner's bones and hide reached Adelaide, he cared nothing else. Even the station master at Tarari railway station voiced his disgust at the cruelty. The South Australian government quickly convened a commission to investigate the horrifying accusations. The writer of the letter was revealed to be Reverend Johann Fleal, who had given evidence in the trial. The commission were exceedingly referential to Fleal, presuming him to have been misguided out of a sense of compassion. Nevertheless, his entire argument was destroyed. Jackie seemed to be able to speak and comprehend English quite reasonably, despite Fleal's assertion that he could not communicate with his lawyer. Furthermore, Jackie had a reputation for violence and had resisted arrest. He had then attempted to harm Bannigan in an escape attempt. Considering the seriousness of the charge against him, his reputation and his actions, it was deemed appropriate that he be restrained at all times. It also emerged that one of the Aboriginals with the party had attempted to pass a tomahawk to Jackie to free himself. Reverend Fleal admitted that a heavy chain was not used, the ring and chain weighing together only 1 pound 14 ounces, and that Jackie could move his arms, but persisted in his belief that he should not have been restrained. The ring was mostly hidden from the sun by hair and the man's chin, and no marks of burning were found on Jackie's neck. When the camel and saddle were brought into his presence and Fleal asked to show how it was torturous to sit upon the animal, he could not. Jackie was able to move about on the saddle. At resting time for dinner, Jackie was always provided with shade if it was available. Furthermore, the Tarawi station master denied expressing any disgust with the treatment of the prisoner. A petition was started in January 1890 to have Jackie's sentence commuted. 2,250 people, out of a population of 133,000, added their signatures, and the document was presented by a deputation to the Premier 1 week later on the 22nd of January 1890. It was presented to the acting governor in an executive council meeting, and the sentence was altered to one of life imprisonment. It was reported in May 1890 that Marek may not have been the first victim of Jackie. Although no details were given, it was believed in the far north that he had killed before. Following his reprieve, Jackie was sent to Yatala prison on the 1st of February 1890. Marek's body was exhumed from its burial place near Lake Hope and reinterred at Paynham Cemetery, Adelaide, in May 1891. On the 28th of October 1892, Jackie died at Yatala prison from tuberculosis.